Day 26. Crazy. We're doing our little mini quiz today. And before we do even the practice mini quiz, we're going to do a quick little review of how to graph absolute value. So, I printed your little practice quizzes as double-sided. So let's go ahead and flip over to the back side, and we're going to create our guide here. Does everyone have one of these papers? No. Is there one in your red folder by chance? Did I leave one for you? If I didn't, let me give you one. Does anyone need one? I've got extras. It's this. That's right. Here you go. Okay. And I'll put them up here in case anyone else needs it. So let's start by creating a little guide, and we're going to highlight the ones that we are going to be quizzing over. Some of these are good to know, but we're not going to use all of them for this unit. So we have here the first thing written is called the parent function. It is the absolute value of x. So whatever x is, whenever we have, let's see, when we have y equals x, our x and our y are going to have the same value, except for our y will always be positive. So that would, let's see, how am I going to label that? Let's draw the graph of it. So let's look at our first little graph chart here. And above it, I'm going to write y equals absolute value of x. And then we're going to start by coming up with some coordinates so that we can graph this properly. And remember, our coordinates are written as x first and y second. So when we find coordinates, we want to start by picking a random number for x. I think we should start with 0. So if we wanted to figure out what our y value would be, how would we do that?
It's 0
It's also going to be 0. How did you know that though?
because it's equal to x and absolute x is going to be 0 as well.
Yes. So this is our equation. Y equals the absolute value of whatever your number is for x. Hello, Kelly. So if I say that x is 0, then the absolute value of 0, how far is it from 0? Well, it is 0. So that means y is also 0. So our x is 0, our y is 0. What if x was 1? We would just do y is the absolute value of x. We said x is 1. The absolute value of 1 is 1. So y is 1. What if we do a negative 1?
Positive 1.
Yeah, so if I have this original equation, y equals the absolute value of x, I chose negative 1 for x. And the absolute value of negative 1 is just positive 1. So our y is 1 when our x is negative 1. Okay. So we've got at least 3 points right here. We could keep going, but let's go ahead and plot these. Where would I put 0, 0?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. I'm going over 0 and I'm going up 0. So I stay right here in the middle. Where would I put 1, 1?
The right one.
Going over one.
Good. To the right in the X direction, 1, up 1 in the Y direction. Here's my next point right there. What about negative 1, 1?
The left one and up one.
Good. My X is negative 1, so I go over to the left 1. My Y is positive 1. I go up 1. There's that. Okay. And as we can see the pattern that's happening, this is our vertex. It's going to be our lowest point where the graph is getting mirrored, kind of acting like that axis of symmetry with our parabolas. So I also know that these are going to continue on. I don't have to write all the points, but we can be aware of it. We know that it's going to keep doing that. So now we just get a ruler and connect those points we made. And you're always going to end up with that V shape. So this is what the graph of y equals the absolute value of x looks like. It will always look like this. That will never change. Does anybody have questions about any part of this so far? We went through it pretty quick. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to give you guys a moment to copy that down if you still need. Does anyone need more time to write? Anyone need more time to write this? If not, we'll move forward. Okay. I'm going to move that. We're going to move forward. Now let's look at the next item on our transformations of absolute value functions, that sheet I gave you. Let's look at y equals the absolute value of x plus a number. So for example, let's do y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. And that plus 2 is inside the absolute value bars. So if you look at the guide under the description, it says that whenever you have plus a number inside the absolute value, our graph is going to actually move to the left, however many units that number is. So this is one we'll be using. I'm going to highlight that. And that's to the left, which is that way. Yes.
Will it be the graph or our lines moving left?
What do you mean the graph versus lines?
Well, if the lines move left, then that means the lines move left. But if the graph moves left, that means technically the lines move right,
Ooh,
relatively.
the lines move left. So it does the exact opposite of what you would think. You would think it would go to the right since you're adding a number, but you'll see when we do the math work, it makes sense as we go through. So here's the example we'll use, that absolute value of x plus 2. If we didn't want to make a bunch of coordinates and we wanted to just use that rule that we're going to move left 2 units, we could just start with this original graph and take each of the points and move them over 2 spaces. That would be the fastest way to do it. So if I started at 0, 0, and it says to move left 2, where would I go to?
-2.
-2, 0. Good. So this would be my vertex. So all I would do is create that V shape from this point instead. My 1, 1 is going to go from here over 2, 1, 2, like that. Everything moves over 2 spaces. You can create the V from there. See that? It's the same graph. It's just moved over. Going to the left. Now, let's say if we forget that we need to just move it over. We could also solve for our points, just like we did in the last problem. So why don't we do that? We're going to use y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. Let's start by plugging in 0, just like we did on the first graph. So y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. What x value are we using?
0.
0. So if I plug 0 into my equation, what happens here?
Get 2.
Yeah, 0 plus 2 gives us 2. Okay, and the absolute value of 2 is just positive 2. So when my x is 0, my y is 2. So let's double check. I'm going to go over 0, so I stay right in the middle, up, 1, 2. And that does hit that point right there. That's perfect. That is perfect. What if we did 1 for x? Y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. So I'll plug in 1 instead of x. 1 plus 2 is 3. The absolute value of 3 is just 3. So when x is 1, y is 3. So I go over 1, I go up 1, 2, 3. Perfect. It worked. We could get the other points by plugging in some negative numbers too. But the main point I wanted to show is that finding all these points takes a lot of time. It's going to be really fast if you're able to just look at your cheat sheet and know, okay, I have a number being added inside the absolute value, so I'm just going to take this original graph and move it over 2 spaces. That's all we're going to do. You guys are a little quiet.
Yeah.
I'm worried you're confused.
I don't know what's going on here. This might be the first quiz I failed because
So tell me what you're confused about. Where are you feeling
I don't
wrong?
know what you're doing.
Where?
The whole thing. I don't understand it. And I honestly don't want to interrupt the class to understand it.
No, it's okay. I would rather you speak out because odds are if you're not understanding it, there's other people that aren't understanding it either. Raise your hand if you're lost.
I understand.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Okay, so you're not alone. Ask me your questions, please. Please. I don't want half of you to be lost.
Well, for me, it's all the way from the beginning. I mean, I understand how to get the absolute value, but it's the whole
Yes.
graph thing you're doing. that I
Okay.
don't understand
The
why you put it
whole
on
graph.
the graph.
What you're doing is finding
Like the
y.
numbers, we just
Like you just make up your own numbers and put
Yeah,
them there.
like-
Number-
Yes.
What's
Basically,
the X is basically always gonna be 0. Just to help you out. It's always gonna be 0.
So whenever we're trying to find coordinates, basically what happens, let me pull out a separate little sheet here. We've got y equals the absolute value of x. That was that first equation.
Yeah.
Basically what we're doing is we are creating sort of like an XY chart. Let's do it like this instead. I'm saying, whenever I plug in, meaning whenever I pick out a value for X, if I pick out, 0, 1, 2, 3, it could be any numbers, -1, -2, -3. It really doesn't matter what numbers you choose as long as they're small numbers that are shown on the graph. We only want to pick X's that are on this graph. So anything from -6 to +6, right? Because if I picked like X is 25, that's way over here. I can't graph that. It's too far off. Okay. So I'm picking values that I see on my graph. So what I do now is I take this original equation, y equals the absolute value of x, this is x, And I'm just taking these numbers I chose and putting them in. So I'm trying letting x be 0. So what is the absolute value of 0?
0.
0. So my answer here is 0. And remember, that's equal to y because that's what our equation says. So since we put x here as 0, then when x is 0, y is 0. We could do it with other numbers. What if we wanted to see what y is when x is 1? How would I find that?
1.
I just put 1 in here. What's the absolute value of 1?
1.
1. And that's my equation, y equals 1. So when x is 1, y is 1. Let's do another one. Y equals the absolute value of x. X is 2. I'm telling you x is 2. What's the absolute value of 2?
2.
2. So that means y is 2 when x is 2.
So what x is just mirroring, y is just mirroring x. Until you get to the negative, then a negative is a positive.
Yeah. So let's plug in some negative x numbers. Let's see so remember our equation is y is the absolute value of x. So when I plug in my x, let's plug in, -1. What's the absolute value of -1? 1. So when x is -1, y is +1. And these would also serve as your coordinates.
So the only way that rule does not work is when it's a positive. It's always going to be a positive. Because if it's
Yes.
negative, it's a positive.
It's just always positive.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's try another x value. I want to know what y is whenever I put -2 instead of x.
2.
2. So y equals +2. 2.
And then that we just graphed it the exact way
Yes.
here.
So whenever I put -3 instead of x, because remember, this is that original equation, y is the absolute value of x. All I'm doing is replacing x with these numbers. I'm going to replace x with -3 this time. So whenever x is -3, y is what?
Positive.
+3.
It's just the basic rule is just
Flip
numbers
flop,
approximate to
yeah.
0.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, that part I get.
Yeah.
Why are we putting so many points on the graph and it's turning into an arrow? Why are
The
we
V
doing that?
shape.
Yeah, why are we doing that?
So this is just the shape that an absolute value graph comes out to be.
So you have a lot of points on it.
So you'll need just at least 3 points. You'll need to find that lowest point, that middle point here, and then you'll need to find the next point that comes off. Once you find those 3 points, you can just trace your arms out and it'll give you the right graph.
Okay.
So you don't have to have 27 points on your graph as long as you have the lowest point. So that's why we sometimes have a bunch of numbers to plug in because, for example, if our graph is lower, we might have to plug in a few values until our graph starts going in the other direction.
And did you move 2 to the left because the number ended up being 2? Does it change? Is it always going to be 2 when you have a?
With the formula, yeah.
Let's do it. Let's
Why
do
does it, will it tell you which formula to use
Negative
with that?
2, right.
Yeah,
What do you
I
mean?
get
Like,
that.
y
That 2
equals
comes
x
from
plus
that.
2, so
Because
these
it's
are
That's,
the
yeah, that's,
formulas,
it's
the
the,
absolute value
that's
factor we
the-
have
the-
right here.
Yes.
So
that's
the first one told
that
us
do it. That's
y
where you're gonna move it
equals
all, move that.
the x,
vertex
just the
along there,
x, so y equals 1, and then 1, and that's
Yes.
what you're,
So-
okay. So y
Yes.
equals x plus h.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, you need to.
Will it be y equals 1 plus
Okay,
1?
so we're gonna
1
start at
plus 2.
2.
Yes, so your
On,
X
on,
would be,
on this
or
one
your
here
Y would be
is where we
3 then.
start at.
Okay,
One plus two
okay.
If you
is
don't know,
Right.
you don't already know.
Okay,
You plot that
okay,
out,
so
you're
that's
gonna
what the
end up your
second one
point.
is, y equals x plus 2 is that formula.
You already knew
Yes.
it because we had that one to work
Yes.
with, right? So all you do is
Right.
add 2 to the left.
So it tells you whatever that is,
Yes.
so whatever number
Sorry.
you plug in.
Yes.
I have this, so whatever
Okay,
number I
now
plug
look,
in,
it's
2
proximity to
plus
0.
Okay.
So on the y-axis,
So it'd be
you
4
have negative numbers, you're
x,
just
and
counting
then
up.
y will
Count
be,
up towards 0 as opposed to down towards 0.
okay,
So it's the
okay.
same number either way.
Okay,
Yeah.
now,
So the
I
negative
think the
number is
easiest
like
way to
negative
think about it
5,
is
the
that's
absolute
just
value
changing
should be
brown,
how many
white,
counting
and
points you're counting
Pretty
up
much.
towards
That's
0.
really all you're doing. You're
Okay,
changing the
so
y-intercept,
okay, now following you on that one.
and then
Now,
it's like you're graphing a
we get
normal
zero
line,
from
but as soon
here.
as you hit the lowest point,
So
it
this would
bounces
be like a
back up.
-3.
Yeah.
Yeah, negative
So
3.
x
Okay,
is
so
gonna be
our
whatever number
starting
you
point
plug
is gonna
in,
be
Uh-huh.
y is gonna be whatever
Yeah, you put like,
number
no,
you
no,
plug
no,
in.
no.
Whatever
And
number you
then-
get. Yes.
Okay,
Whatever you get.
Right?
But it's
Okay.
minus number.
All right.
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 So-
what I'm saying is here.
Everybody.
That would be the y
Stress.
value, would start here.
Yes, yes,
And then that would be our starting point.
yes.
For this formula.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
look at a few more.
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay, so let's look at, let's flip it over and look at the actual little practice mini quiz and make sure that we kind of know what we're doing here. Let's start with number 1. Okay, so number 1, we have the formula y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. So there's a few things we could do. We could find some coordinates by plugging in values for x, or we could look at our little cheat sheet and see what it tells us to do.
Translate K units up.
Yes, so this one says plus 2 on the outside of the absolute value. Over here, when it says plus k on the outside of the absolute value, it says we take it k units up.
So take it 2 units up.
That's weird.
Yes.
All right.
Strange.
Really
So
weird.
if our normal graph, our parent function starts at 0, 0 is the lowest point, where would the lowest point be for this graph?
On 2?
On 2. And then you could just draw it from there.
So it'd be 0, 0 is where it starts, and then go up to.
Yes. So
Oh.
when x is 0,
Yep.
so I'm going to plug in 0 for
That's
x. 0 plus 2, y is 2.
Do you want our
So
coordinates
just
on
go
the
up
side?
to.
I would like at least 3 coordinates.
So just go up.
1 for the middle point, and then at least 2 on each side of that middle point.
Okay.
So we've got 0, 2. Let's try when x is 1. So if I have 1 here instead of x, what's the absolute value of 1? 1, and then you add 2 and gives you 3. So y is 3.
Sorry,
Right?
Chris. What
Yeah.
so going by this, like if you do plus on the x-axis, you go to the negative side, but on this one, you go to the positive side. you do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, so it's odd because whenever we add or subtract inside the absolute value bars, we're doing the opposite thing. Whenever we add outside of the absolute value, we do what it tells us to do. It's really just an odd pattern that happens because of the way the numbers come out. I don't have the best explanation to give you, but it is
That's
that
how it
way.
works,
Yeah, just how it works. Okay, what's another point we could plot for this one?
and 3.
Yeah, -1. So the absolute value of -1 is what?
1,
1 plus 2 is
3.
3. So I go over -1 and up 3. And that's all you need to make a graph. From here, I can go this way and this way. And that would be your graph.
Number 2. Let's add.
So number 2, this is just like the one we did together before.
We move to -2.
So yes, we start with the absolute value of x, but now we're adding 2 inside the absolute value. If you look at what we just did here, that means we're going to move it 2 to the left. So if my starting point was here, I'm going to go over 1, 2. If my next point was here, I'm going to go over 1, 2. My next point was here, 1, 2. See that? So I went from here and I went over 2. Okay, we could also find points. X is 0. What is y? So if I plug 0 in for x here, 0 plus 2 is 2. So my y is 2. If I go to 0, 2, I see that that falls nicely on my graph. If I try -1, what's -1 plus 2?
Wait, I'm lost.
Yeah.
So we're plugging in
-1,
-1 for x.
3,
1.
-1 plus 2 is 1, and then the absolute value of 1 is 1. Do you want me to write that out?
Oh, I did write that.
Yeah, so
I
we're
put -2.
y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. So if we plugged in -1 for x, we need to solve what's inside the absolute value first and then find the absolute value of that. What's -1 plus 2? 1. And then the absolute value of 1 is 1. So when x is -1, y,
Absolute value bars, they kind of function like parentheses in
Yeah.
those operations. So you do what's inside them before you worry about them. You
Yes.
worry about them at the very end.
yeah. So you find the answer
You
that's
keep that
inside.
-1 until the very end. Never
Yes.
change it to a positive.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
I'm gonna sit by you. See what the quiz talks about.
I can do 2.
On the bonus, yes, the bonus is tricky. That's why it's a bonus. We'll go over it though.
If you're adding plus whatever, you have to go to the left. Go to the negative.
What questions do we have right now?
So I'm making up my own.
Yes, go ahead.
Go see corn.
Yes.
I'm making up my own coordinates.
Uh-huh.
My first coordinate is -2 and 0.
Okay.
Do you know how I got that?
Do you know how you got it?
No, do you know how I got it? Is that right?
It is right. You go over to -2 and you're going up 0. That's your vertex. That is correct.
So where did you get 0 and 2?
Because I just,
Oh,
yeah, you see how it
I
goes
see the
up.
point. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Okay.
I'm understanding a little
Okay.
more.
Okay. How we thinking? How we feeling?
X. You can't do it without the cheat sheet.
Don't want to be here.
You actually totally can
You
if
really
you
can?
just put numbers in for x and solve for y every time. You'll also get the right numbers every time.
See, I missed out on somebody's yesterday. He leaving early, so.
Yes. So, okay. Does anybody want to talk about number 2 more? Or do you want to look at 3?
3.
Okay, let's look at 3. Now I have y is the absolute value of x minus 3. Let's look at our little cheat sheet. It matches this one. What are we going to do?
Start at -3.
We're going to translate k units down. So since we're going down 3, yes, exactly. You're going to go, instead of at 0, 0, you're going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. That would be your starting point. And from there, you can draw your V. Like that. That make sense?
So when you started at 3, what you do? You went up one
X
over
is 0.
Yes, up 1 over 1.
for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I make X 0, and I plug in 0 to this equation, 0 minus 3 is what? -3. And look, that's where that first point was, at 0, -3. If I plug in 1 for X, so X is 1 minus 3, that is, what did you say?
-2.
-2. So I can check when I go over 1 down to -2 for Y. That falls on the graph. That's good. Y'all look so stressed.
Very.
What are we stressed about? I feel like you guys got it yesterday.
I'm stressing over the bonus.
The
I'm
bonus.
stressing over the bonus. I don't understand.
So the bonus is a little different. But we'll get there.
I'm starting to get the hang of it a bit.
Okay, good.
I think it was just like
Negative
Like
1
adding
x
and
plus
making,
1
like-
plus 4.
Yeah.
some of them like go down instead of up and stuff. I
Right,
think that was
right.
what was throwing me off and making me be like, wait a minute.
I get ya. Okay.
Hit -1 and hang up regular 1. I just told me. Yeah.
Where?
On number 3,
On number 3.
Yeah.
Which coordinate?
I have no clue.
How did I get, say your question again.
-1, and then you got +1.
-1, +1. I don't see where
Yeah,
we
see-
got that.
Okay. Where you've got, oh, I'm
Are
sorry.
you talking about number 2?
Yeah, where you got +2 and -2.
Sure. So let me write I'll show you the work for that on number 2. So we took the original equation, which was y
Oh,
equals.
I'm sorry, I meant number 3, but I'm so sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
Yep, I'm confusing you.
That's okay. So which part of number
Okay.
3's got you
You've
lost?
got, I see where you got -3.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to 2 where you made the V? Right here.
Where
Yeah,
I made the
and
V.
then- Yes.
So the only reason that I just made the V is because I knew that the parent function, the original absolute value of X, is always starting at 0 and then going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and then up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. This is what the original equation graph will always look like.
Okay.
Y's absolute value of X will always have this exact shape. So what I did is I knew that that was going to be the shape. And since it said go down 3, I just took that shape and I moved it down 3 spaces.
Right, that part I got,
Mm-hmm.
and then you started branching off.
Yes.
That's
So I
where you
moved
lost
this down
me.
3 spaces, and I knew that with my original graph, I would go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. I just did the same thing from this point. Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but now how do we get the coordinates?
How do we get the coordinates?
Yeah, where do you, I mean, when you start branching off like that,
Mm-hmm.
we have to make the coordinates, right?
So it really just depends on whether you decide to use the knowledge of knowing, like, okay, I'm going to go down 3, so I'm just going to do that and then name my coordinates, or if you decide to start with random X numbers and then find your Y numbers. Like, for instance, let's see. If I wanted to just name the coordinates after I knew what the graph would look like, I would want to name my vertex, my middle point here. And what would this point be?
That'd be -3.
That would be our Y,
Right.
-3.
Y
What would our
negative-
X be?
It would be at 0.
Good. So there's 1 point.
So
What
that's,
2 other points we could name?
Oh, okay, so we're making our own up.
Yeah,
as we go.
yes, yes.
Okay, see, I,
Perfect.
not enough structure. I like structured math.
Yes.
I do not.
That's
Okay.
where I was confused at too.
See,
'cause I was like, where
right?
are these numbers coming from?
I mean,
Like,
I like
Okay.
fraction, you know, I like the
Yes.
equations where we know what we're
I
doing.
know it, I
I
know
feel
it.
This
better
is,
about
this
this.
is not,
now.
this
I'm
is
happy
not
with
the
it.
kind I like.
With
Right.
rules.
Why
Thank
equals
you.
X?
Yes, there has to be
Y equals
structure.
X
I
minus
know.
3, so Y
Ugh.
equals 0 minus
Alright.
3, which will come out to still be minus 3. So
Yes.
that to come out with, then we plug in our next one. That'd be 1 minus 3. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Alright.
Yes, Erica.
So,
Alright, I got it.
and for the reflection over the x-axis part, in terms of Blender, let's say, if I have a cube that is a meter above the x-axis
Yeah.
and its center point is on 0, 0, if I were to put a negative in front of it, it would take the cube and mirror it a meter below the x.
Yes.
Is that exactly what we're doing here?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
So let's, gosh, I guess, okay, we will get to the bonus, I promise. I'm gonna answer all those questions.
Sorry.
And no, it's okay. I'm getting excited and wanna tell it to you. Let's finish 4 and 5, and then we'll explain that. Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions on number 3?
Oh, well.
Please ask them.
You said we only need 1 or 2 coordinates on the side?
I would like
Just 3?
3, so like 1 for the middle and then 1 on each side.
Great. Okay.
However, to be honest, this is our last quiz. We're trying to get it done. If you don't put coordinates, I'm not going to take points off today. Okay. So don't feel like you gotta. If the coordinates help you, use them. If you don't need them, don't use them. It's fine. Today is fine. We're trying to get this done. Okay. Number 4.
You're gonna
Exactly.
We started at 3?
Yeah. So let's look at our little paper. We have minus a number inside the absolute value. So right here, we have minus a number inside the absolute value. So what does it tell us to do?
Go to the right.
Go to the right this time. So that means I'm going to move all my points to the right, however many it tells me to.
It's kind of confusing because at first I thought that since it's a
Right.
negative number that I had to go to the
Right.
left. but
It's so strange how it ends up being the opposite. It was really kind of throwing me off last night when I was making the quizzes too. I was like, man, this is weird. But okay, so if our original equation, like y equals the absolute value of x, if this original equation starts here, that starting point is always 0, 0. And I need to go over how many spaces to the right? 3. Where should my new vertex go?
3.
1, 2, 3, right here. Oh, that isn't even right. Okay, so if this is my lowest point and it's the middle of my graph, my V, where can I put my next 2 points?
4, 2, and 4.
Yes, so I'm going to do the same thing I did on the last 3 graphs. I'll go up 1 over 1, above 4, up 1 over 1, above 2. That's it. And then you just connect that up. Does it start to make a little more sense now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so how would we how would we do the coordinates?
So, like, how would we find our graph without knowing that it moves us over?
No, what I mean is, okay, since we already know that it's gonna go to 2 and 4,
Mhm.
would it be you'd go up 1, right? So would you go like 1?
You can think of the number next to x as our slope again.
Yeah.
So remember, right now there's no number next to x. So what's our slope?
Our slope is 1.
1. Our slope is 1. So
Yeah.
1 over 1, our rise is 1, our run is 1, that's why we're always going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, because our slope is 1. The only time that we won't go up 1 over 1 is if there's a number next to x, and we're not messing with that today.
Thank
So, you're welcome.
you.
I wanted to keep it simple as I could. And I'm not asking you to know that. Just know that all of these graphs are all going to be up 1 over 1 on both sides.
So since we're just going to the right, we don't have,
All your graphs, all you're doing is either moving it up, moving it down, moving it left, or moving it right. That's all you got to do.
And that's how we get our coordinates?
Yeah.
So the first coordinate would be what?
So let's see,
0,
what's
3?
our x right here?
0, 3 is our first one.
0, 3. Yep, you could use 0, 3. 100% you could. 0, 3 is on our graph. What's this second point we found here?
0, 2. So 2, 1.
So this one right here, it lines up with 2 on the x and 1 on the y. So it would be 2, 1. What about this point, our vertex?
0.
3, 0. Good. We could do one more. What's this point?
0, 4.
Over 0, up 4?
Oh,
4,
4,
4,
1.
Ah, 4, 1. Good. 4, 1. Beautiful. Good job.
Thank God.
Ooh, look at that.
Okay. And then the last one is a little tricky. We do 2 things instead of just 1.
So it'd be
Our
0
x is
plus
3.
3, which would be 3 minus 2.
Yeah, so this is where maybe coordinates would be helpful. If I use 0 for x,
Plus 3.
0 plus 3 is 3. What's 3 minus 2?
And this time we're gonna do 1.
1.
So those, okay, that's not really
Good. So I'm going to go over 0, up 1.
1.
Let's
Okay.
find another point.
Um,
Let's do, I don't know, x is 1. Maybe that. What's 1 plus 3?
4.
4. Minus 2.
2.
2. There's another point. Over 1, up 2. Okay.
Let's see.
What else we want to use?
So there's 5 minus 2, 5, 4, 3.
Use 2 for x,
Yeah. Plus
maybe?
3 is 5.
That's
minus
5. Minus 2 is
3.
3.
So on this one, you don't use any functions?
You could use the functions. You could just say that we are going over to the left 3 and then down 2. That'll work the same. But if doing 2 of these transformations at the same time is a little confusing, this is where we can also solve by plugging in values for x and finding your y. So it looks like this is going to keep going up and up and up in this direction. We need to figure out where the lowest point is so that we get the other
okay,
side.
You didn't finish.
Yeah. So why don't we use some negative numbers? Can we do that?
Right. So,
You want to try -1 for x? If I put -1 in for x, let's see. -1 plus 3 is what?
2.
2.
0.
Minus 2, 0. So now we have a point here, -1, 0. Okay, let's do -2. See if it goes any lower than that. -2 plus 3, what's that? 1 minus 2 is 1 minus 2.
Oh, -1.
-1. Yeah. So we go over to -2, down to -1. So we started too far over to the right, didn't we? And that's okay. Should we try -3? -3 for x?
Yes.
What's -3 plus 3?
Negative.
Negative.
What's -3 plus
0.
+3?
0.
0. Those numbers cancel out. It's the same number, but a negative and a positive, right? If I have $3 and I spend $3, I have $0. So 0 minus 2, -2.
See, that's where I get confused at, because I already look at the points and there go the coordinates, so all that extra adding in the parentheses kind of confusing.
It is tricky. It definitely is tricky.
And that's the last point, right? That's my bottom right there.
Well, we gotta make sure, cause we thought maybe that the 0 would be the last one, but then there was another one.
Okay.
Unless you already did the transformations and you know that's your bottom point.
I went for the transformations. I didn't do it this way.
Is this what you ended up with your bottom point?
Yes. That's what
Okay,
ended
I
up
bet you
with.
it is then. Let's see. Let's plug in -4. If we get a smaller number, then that's correct.
Don't fiddle me, cause
Okay, -4 plus 3. What's that? -1. What's the absolute value of -1? 1 minus 2. 1 minus 2, -1. Ah, good. We've had a turnaround in the Y's. We went from 0, -1, -2, back up to -1. So this is our lowest point because now we have -4, -1. There we go. You see that?
I use my 3 as my x and my -2 as my y.
3
I
is
know
your
it's like on the equation,
uh-huh.
cause I use the translation.
Yes.
You move over to the left, so I use the x as my. I mean the 3 as my x and the -2 as my y. That's how I got the lowest point. Is that not right?
No, that's correct too. So the other way to do this without coming up with a million coordinates, remember we've got transformations going on here. If I look at my paper, when I add a number inside the absolute value, we move to the left. So if I started here in the middle, I'm gonna go left how many?
3.
3. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I went down
And then it
to-
says I go down 2 because -2 outside. So I'll go 1, 2, and boom, there's your bottom
That's how I
point.
got
And you
mine
could
back
just
over
draw the
there.
V from there. That might be a lot easier.
Very much so.
Yes.
So with that being said, I think I got the bonus.
Okay. Any questions about number 5 before we talk about the bonus?
Good, a little bit more comfortable, but not a lot, but I'm getting there. Alright,
okay.
some bonus.
You guys want to look at the bonus?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So to show the bonus, here's what I think would be the most helpful. Let's start with color. I'm gonna give my original equation like this, and then we're gonna kind of do the transformation steps. So my green is showing me y is the absolute value of x. Okay. So let's see. We have a negative on the outside of our absolute value.
Okay, thank you.
We have x plus 1, and then outside we also have plus 4. So let's look inside of our absolute value first. X plus 1. On our little chart, what does it tell you we should do?
Move over to the left.
Yes, we're going to move to the left. How many units?
1.
1 unit. So this plus 1 tells me I need to go over 1. So here's my new bottom point. And then
It's plus 4, so you're gonna go up more.
plus 4. So I'm going to go up 4. So up 1, 2, 3, 4.
And there's your point.
Almost.
Almost.
So we have our answer, but guess what? This is the only time your absolute value won't be positive. There's a negative sign on the outside. So when you see a negative sign, all you do is take the positive 4, and now it's -4. And instead of your graph opening up, now it opens down.
I think you said that was possible.
It's
What?
not possible unless there's a negative outside. That's the
Oh, wow.
only exception. This is a very
So
special
that's
case.
what, that little piece at the bottom of that graph is what we're supposed to draw.
Yes, this would be the answer.
Yeah, I got that shit.
Yeah.
Because I went up to +4.
Yes.
Negative
So it was
So if
basically
you're
what I
at
was
zero,
asking.
Exactly what you were asking, yeah.
if you're at zero, you have -0 plus 4, isn't that? So it's still +4, you just have to draw it out.
Ooh, let's see then.
I'm confused about this whole problem, how we just started.
Let's
with
double
it.
check.
Cause if I plug in numbers, it's not.
I think, Chance, I think you might be right.
And if it's
Of
not
course
in
he
this
is,
parentheses,
he's
so the
not. I
absolute
think it
parentheses.
might be up here.
You know
Is
what?
that where you're
That's
thinking
my
it would
answer.
be?
Please don't tell me because that's what I got. Don't play with me.
Would it be right up here, Chance?
Yeah, be like, again,
I
it's
think
0.
you're right. I messed up our
Yeah,
order of
yeah.
operations.
Yeah, negative.
You're killing us.
Oh,
Negative
You're
1,
so
4.
right.
You can't confuse us.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do.
I
On
still
the quiz, listen to me.
Yeah.
This part, we're gonna take off since I messed that up. I'm not gonna expect you to
But
do
that
it.
made it sense for me. That
Okay.
made it sense.
So all you're gonna have to do is move it left or right and then flip it upside down. Okay, we're gonna get rid of that extra step just because I probably confused all of you just now.
Can you draw out the whole thing though, so we know if we got it right? Cause I don't, it's a lot going on in that little.
Let's see. So it was y equals
This is secret sabotage.
Yeah,
negative x plus 1, and then it was
4 plus 4.
plus 4. Okay, so I totally forgot my order of operations. We have the negative outside. It's like distributing in a way, but not really. So let's see. Here's the original point. We went to the left one, and then we flipped it upside down because of the negative, and then we went up 1, 2, 3, 4. So this be our graph. Be like that.
Got it right.
Nice. Smart. Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening here is I'm going from this. This is my first step. This is the graph of y is the absolute value of x. This is the starting parent function, the original graph. Next, I'm doing the +1 because it's inside the absolute value. That moves it to here. That, so I'm kind of showing my work to the side here. +1 means over 1 that way. Now we're still in this area. We've got the negative outside the absolute value. The negative is going to flip it upside down. Okay. That. And then last but not least, we have +4. And that moves this red one up 4.
Yeah, that's a lot of lines.
Yeah, a lot of lines. So here's the steps we took. Here's the answer.
Got you.
And this is bonus.
So if we, about the reflection thing, because it's a bonus, but the other one where it's the negative is inside of the brackets.
Mm-hmm.
If it's on the y, if it flips on the y-axis, it would flip left to right instead of up and down.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So like if it was here and it was flipped to like over the y-axis, it would change it to here.
I'm so confused.
So that, yeah, let me not even go into that. We don't got a problem with that in there. Don't worry about it.
Okay, okay. So, what are you confused about, Kelly?
Oh, I'm just plugging numbers in and none of the math makes sense.
Really? So what numbers are you plugging in?
So if you plug in. Okay, let's start with the first one that I'm confused on. So you plug in a -1.
Okay, -1 for x. So let's do the math. Let me grab a sticky note. So when x is -1, here's what we're doing. Our equation is y equals negative absolute value of x plus 1 plus 4. Okay, we said x is -1, so I'm going to rewrite it with okay. So we do what's inside the absolute value first. What's -1 plus +1?
0.
0. So 0.
And the negative just means nothing.
-0 is 0.
Okay, just make
And then 0 plus 4 is
4.
4. So when x is -1, y is 4.
That's my.
And looky here, we go over -1, we do go up 4.
I don't know how to do it that way.
My brain kept wanting to, because after that you end up with negative numbers inside,
Yes.
and then it wanted to take the two negatives and make it a positive
Ew.
instead of.
Right. So like let's do let's plug in -4 for x. We would get -4 plus 1 plus 4. Okay. What is -4 plus 1?
-3.
-3. It's the absolute value of -3.
3.
3. But there's a negative outside of it, so it stays -3.
Yeah, where it kept doing weird stuff.
Yeah. And then plus 4. -3 plus 4. 1. So when when x is -4, y is 1. -4, 1.
Yep.
So I'm going to go over -4, up 1, and yeah, it lands on my line. Perfect.
Two negatives makes a positive.
I know, right?
Uh,
Where it's different from parentheses. Okay. Any questions?
Oh, yeah. But not right now.
You sure?
But it's quiz.
Okay.
Let's see what's
So-
going on with this quiz.
Let me pause the video. We'll get started, and I'm going to explain some things to you.